Today on America's Test Kitchen, Bridget prepares Cornish game hens. Adam reviews French presses in the equipment corner. And Julia makes the ultimate French apple tart. Right here on America's Test Kitchen.
It's sad but true, I am the oldest person here at America's Test Kitchen, so when I talk about the things I remember from the 50s, of course they're all black and white, everyone thinks I'm nuts. I remember the Leave It to Beaver show, Howdy Doody, even Annette Funicello from the Mouseketeers. I also remember some of the food, and Cornish game hens is one of my favorites. You get one per person, you get white and dark meat at the same time, and of course they're really cute. So now it's time to head back to the future with Bridget and take something from the past, Cornish game hens, and make them great for the 21st century.
So let's get to it. We've got 4 Cornish game hens here. These each weigh about 1.5 pounds. What I want to do is all this skin area, I want it to be in direct contact with our heat source. So one of the best ways to do that is to start by butterflying. Get a good pair of kitchen shears. I'm going to find the backbone and just cut right alongside all the way down until this side is released. And then I like to turn it around. It's just easier to grab. There we go. And back to the other side.
Okay.
So we'll get rid of the bone. And now this
is my favorite part.
Yeah, this?
The chiropractor part.
Exactly. You're going down, buddy. We want to flatten this out. So I'm just going to press right on it. You can also kind of snap it, but these go a lot easier than chicken. All right? So we want it to be nice and flat. Now, this is a little cumbersome for a dinner plate. So we'll take a very sharp knife, and I'm going to go right down the middle of the breastbone, which is running right here. All right, so I want to loosen the skin from the meat, and that's going to allow the fat underneath to render out. So I'm just going to take my finger and kind of loosen the skin from the thigh meat, and also I want to work under the breast meat as well, just like that. Now, another way that we're going to get some of these fat pockets to release and render its fat out more readily, I'm going to take a skewer here. I've got a metal skewer. And I just want to poke a few holes right through those fat pockets. And again, we're creating little channels so that the fat can render out. Next step, we're going to tuck the wings underneath. That's just so that these cook more evenly and you don't end up with wing tips that are straight up. And now one of the ways that we get really crisp skin is we want to make sure that the exterior of these are very dry. So I want to take some paper towels and blot them, both sides, meat side and skin side. And next, I'm going to turn all of these skin side down. So I've got a tablespoon of kosher salt. You wouldn't want to season this with a tablespoon of regular salt. It'd be very over-seasoned. All right, so that is the bone side. I'll flip all of these back over. A little prettier on this side. Now we also want to season the skin, but we've got a little extra ingredient here. This is another tablespoon of kosher salt. I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of vegetable oil, and I just want to mix the salt with the oil until it's coated. That oil is going to help disperse the salt more evenly. And now I've got a teaspoon of baking powder. That's going to go in there too. Now, baking powder kind of acts like a desiccant. You know, it helps to draw some of the moisture out, but it also breaks down the proteins in the skin. So the salt is going to draw out the moisture from the skin, and the baking powder is going to help with color. Let's just rub all this all over the surface of the skin. All right, this looks great. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this right back on, nestle them together so they all fit. And you want some good news? This whole preparation can actually be done a day in advance. So we want to let the skin air dry. That's really, really important. So this is going to go into the refrigerator for at least 4 hours, but overnight is even better.
And there's no cover on this?
No cover,
okay.
And you want to leave it in there for up to 24 hours. All right, Chris, you can see what a huge difference that air drying made on the skin, and that is great because it's going to brown so quickly in the oven. Before we put these in the oven, I want to spray the skin with a little bit of vegetable oil cooking spray, and that is also going to promote browning, and a final seasoning of black pepper. So what you may have not noticed is that I don't have a skillet out here. We are not going to sear these on a skillet because it would take a few batches to sear them all. So what I've done instead is I've preheated the oven to 500 degrees. But at the very beginning, I put a sheet pan right in there. So it's super hot. It's going to act like a giant skillet. These are going to hit the sheet pan and start to sear immediately. You can hear that.
I can hear that.
All right, so that was a heck of a lot easier than searing in a skillet. Now these are going to go back into that 500-degree oven, and you'll only need about 10 minutes with the skin side down.
Here's a quick tip about speeding up wine breathing. What do I mean? Well, until recently, I didn't think it made a difference, but especially with red wines, there are a lot of tannins and sulfur compounds that need to oxidize to mellow out. And if you don't let the wine breathe, it really doesn't taste very good. Now, if you just open the bottle, let it sit for a couple hours, you'll notice there's very little surface area to oxidize. So it doesn't make much difference. You could open this 4 hours ahead of time and the wine isn't going to change very much. You could also pour a glass of wine. And again, there isn't that much surface area, and that's going to take a long time to oxidize as well. So we tried two very unusual methods to speed this process up. The one, believe it or not, which is used by some restaurants, is to use a blender to actually take a bottle of wine and pour it in. I know this looks crazy, and hit the blender. And we did that for 30 seconds and then tasted the wine. And guess what? The wine actually tasted pretty good. But we have a slightly better method which does not use electricity. It's just two pitchers like this. You pour the wine back and forth 15 times, and then you have a great glass of wine ready to drink in just a couple minutes. Another great quick tip from America's Test Kitchen.
All right, Chris, so it's about 10 minutes. We're going to go ahead and take the hens out of the oven. There we go. And if you could shut the door, and I also need you to start preheating the broiler for me.
Okay.
All right, so we need to turn these over, skin side up. And you can see that they're starting to get a little bit of good color developed, but we're not quite done yet. These are going to go back under the broiler, and we're going to let these cook for another 5 minutes until it's really brown and crisp. Oh, God, they're gorgeous, but I do need to take the temperature, see if they're registering around 160 in the breast meat. This is 161, so we hit it. All right, check out this color. Oh, and they're so crisp.
And there's no work at the end.
There's no work at the end.
Yeah.
These are ready to go. So, two halves make a whole, right? I love how dainty they are.
Dainty I am, did you say?
I'm going to get some of that beautiful
It's moist,
skin.
it's thoroughly cooked, but the skin, what I like is there's that salt, there's a nice crispy, salty crust to it as well. So the secret to terrific roasted Cornish game hen was to spatchcock or butterfly them, cut them in half, use baking powder, salt, and pepper. Let that sit uncovered in the fridge at least 6 hours up to 24, so it's perfect for makehead. Preheat that oven 500 degrees and put a pan in the oven to get that hot. And those go skin down in the pan for 10 minutes, take them out, set the broiler back in for 4 or 5 minutes. So from America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, an all-new recipe for roasted Cornish game hens, and most of it can be done way ahead of time.
That's right.
I happen to love French press coffee, like the full flavor, and I don't even mind the grittiness, because it gets gritty sometimes. But the question is, does it matter what kind of French press machine you have? They shouldn't cost too much. That's one of the beauties of French press. And you've done some testing to illuminate this issue.
I certainly have. Let's talk about how they work in the first place. You have the coffee in this carafe here. You pour the hot water in, and normally you would give this a stir and sort of let it wait for about 45 seconds. You then start the timer for 4 minutes. The coffee grounds steep in the water. You put the top on, which has a filter, and you press it down. And that pushes all the coffee to the bottom and leaves you with sort of a thick, rich, viscous, slightly oily coffee on the top. And that's what
My
you
kind
like.
of coffee. Yeah.
We've encountered a couple problems with French presses in the past. Number one, you can see that it can be difficult to press down. There's back pressure from getting the coffee grounds down there. Seriously, Chris, if you get a little too vigorous against the back pressure, we've even heard of people splashing coffee, screaming hot coffee.
Do you ever think you're getting a little old here? Like it's hard to press down a French press, really?
We'll be doing this from the nursing home some year, Chris. Both of us will. We've even heard some cases where people apply so much pressure that a glass carafe will shatter or crack. And these things are sort of a pain to clean. You get all those sloppy, slushy coffee grounds at the bottom. There are two types, the glass carafe and insulated metal ones. The price range was a low of $26.50 up to $120. We evaluated the flavor and the body of the coffee. We monitored the temperature over the course of an hour at half an hour and an hour. The glass ones all hovered right around 148 degrees, which is certainly drinkable, But the metal insulated ones, that coffee was more like 165 degrees, so it was a lot hotter. There were also a couple of issues with the filters. This is a model that has a filter that's designed to get the coffee a little bit clearer. It's got a double layer of very fine mesh, and around the outside there's a silicone gasket that really hugs the inside of the carafe. So when you push it down, there's less of that particulate matter floating in the coffee. And I want you to press that one and give that one a taste. It's the same model that we have here.
Oh, so hard.
You need a personal trainer. We'll get you to the gym.
I'll just drink more coffee.
This.
There we are. Okay.
So give that a taste and tell me what you think. Our tasting panel actually had mixed feelings about this.
It's still pretty full-bodied and a little gritty. I wouldn't say it's really clean.
No,
I like
it's
it.
not like brewed coffee, but it doesn't have quite that hallmark viscosity that true French press coffee has that the diehards really like. We had problems on the other end of the scale with these models. These had a little bit too much of that murkiness, and it read as bitterness in terms of the flavor. And that's because these filters were a little bit wobbly inside the carafe, and because the edge doesn't have that silicone gasket, it's actually got coiled wire, and that allows more of the sediment to come through as you're plunging and makes the coffee a little bit bitter to some tasters. The last innovation was this one. You pull out the filter, all the grounds are at the bottom, and then you pull out the grounds keeper, which helps you lift all the spent grounds up and out of the carafe. Didn't work incredibly well. They're still wet and sloppy. We recommend doing this over a trash can.
No, it looks like you pull it up, it would go all over the counter.
It does. It goes all over the counter. It got all over the carafe, so it's not ideal. In the end, this was our winning French press. This is the Bodum Columbia. If you open it up, you can see it's got sort of an old style filter, but it does have that silicone gasket around the edge. It's insulated, double walled. This got every piece of the puzzle right. It made really good tasting coffee. This was the highest rated coffee of all of them. It kept the coffee hotter for longer, and it's mid-priced at about $80. It's also dishwasher safe. So this is our new favorite.
So if you love French press coffee, and I do, and if you want it still to be hot after an hour, which is a good idea, the Bodum Columbia at $80 we think is worth the money. A little pricey, but it keeps the coffee hot, and it's great tasting. If I were to tell you I was going to make you a great apple tart for dessert, you wouldn't quite know what I meant. There's so many different styles. There's one from Normandy, which has an almond paste frangipane filling. It's very nice. There's a classic sort of pastry-style Alsatian tart with pastry cream and apples on top. And then there's the simplest of all. It's just a basic pâte sucrée crust with sliced apples and then thrown in the oven. But there's a fourth style, and that's what we're going to do today. It comes out of Mastering the Art of French Cooking. It's called tarte aux pommes, and it has a reduced applesauce filling with sliced apples on the top, and we love it. So we're going to go into the kitchen with Julia and figure out how to make a great version of an old French classic, tarte aux pommes. You know, every once in a while here in the test kitchen, we dip back into Mastering the Art of French Cooking. I have to say, most of the time, those recipes really do stand the test of time.
Absolutely.
It's one of those few books that 50 years later you go like, yeah, this still works.
Yep, yeah. And this tart is an example of a great recipe. It has three components. It has a nice firm crust on the bottom, that flavorful apple puree above the crust, and then the gorgeous apples on top. And as with any good tart, you're going to start with the nice solid base, the tart dough. What we wound up liking is something